Hey everyone. As Ted said, I'm Luke, and I'm going to tell you about a technique that I use when testing PHP classes that use global functions. And when I say global functions, I'm talking about functions that are procedural style functions that aren't members of any class. And PHP defines thousands of these. You can also define your own. And this makes PHP concise when embedding it in HTML and is fine in procedural scripts, but it can add challenges when testing an object-oriented code base. At some point, you'll need to write classes that use these global functions, and you probably want to test these classes. And when testing, you might wish to control the behavior of the global functions, because maybe they're calling the internet, which can be slow or unavailable. They might be defined by some extension that's not available. Or you might simply want to test how your code responds to the various return values of a global function. So really, what you want to do is mock them. But doing this is hard when they're called directly, because PHP won't let you redefine a global function. And here's an example of a class that's designed to monitor free disk space, and it does so using the global function disk_free_space, which returns the number of bytes on success or false on failure. And the class calls this function directly, and it's therefore not easily tested because we can't control its results. What can we do about this? Let's define some goals. Well, we want to verify the various return values of disk-free space are handled correctly by our class. And we don't want to rely on the current file system in doing this, because that'll vary from machine to machine, and if we do, our results might not be repeatable. And we don't want to fill the disk with data just to find out what happens when the disk is full. If we do, sysadmins won't like you. So I'm going to take you through some techniques that allow you to control the behavior of disk-free space by adding a layer of indirection. One technique would have you defining and using a container class that will wrap the global function. And in testing, you can create a mock version of this class that responds consistently and can be injected into the class under test. Another option would be to create a protected wrapper function in the class that uses the global function. In a test case, you can extend the class under test, overriding the wrapper function, providing you with control of its behavior. Another option would be to create a settable property that contains a variable function or a callback. I'm going to go into detail about variable functions because it may not be as apparent as the other techniques. PHP provides this feature called variable functions. And these are functions that can be called using the value of a variable rather than the name of the function directly. You can store the name of the function as a string and then invoke the variable like a function. Or you could set the variable to an anonymous function. Here's a re-implementation of our disk monitor that uses this technique. It isolates the use of disk-free space by invoking it using a variable function. By default, this variable is set to the name of the global function. But in test cases, you can inject a new variable function using the setter, and thereby control the behavior of disk-free space. So here's the test case that does just that. We pass in a function that always returns 500 bytes, and that allows us to simulate the condition of low disk space. And we can then verify that a warning is logged. Let's revisit our goals and see if we've satisfied them. Well, we can verify the behavior of our monitor against various return values of disk-free space by setting the variable function to an anonymous function that always returns a known value. We didn't rely on the file system, and we didn't fill the disk with data. So I've told you about how to inject variable functions into classes to add a layer of indirection to global function calls. And I've alluded to some other ways you might do this, but I don't have time to go into those. So if you're interested, take a look at my GitHub repository, where I've got code samples of all of the techniques. That's it.